The mercenary bleeds. The smell of blood, disinfectant, and melted metal hung thick in the air of the field hospital. Outside, the scorched plains of Dalvik Prime still smoldered from the last artillery strike. The ceasefire between the Galactic Alliance and the Empire of Zorak had barely held, and now both sides waited, licking their wounds, glaring across no man's land. Corporal Elias Ward stood over a trauma cot, carefully stitching up a Sarnathi scout. His hands were steady, precise, despite the chaos around him. The war had taken many things from Elias: friends, sleep, even a bit of faith. But it hadn't taken his oath as a medic. Then the tent flaps burst open. 2 Alliance guards stumbled in, dragging something between them. Something tall, bloody, and unmistakably Zoraki. The medics nearby froze. A hush rippled through the tent as they laid the body down. Blood soaked the cot. The patient, if you could call her that, was massive, even slumped in pain. Her armor, cracked and scorched, bore the black insignia of the Zoraki elite. Her scales, once a polished obsidian, were now dulled by burns and plasma scoring. One of the nurses backed away. "That's not just any Zoraki. That's Death Fong. That's Sirvatha." Murmurs rose. Someone dropped a scalpel. A senior Trelkin medic growled, "Get her out of here. We don't treat monsters." "She's bleeding out," Elias said. "She's a war criminal," snapped the Trelkin. "She slaughtered an entire garrison at Fort Burrell." Elias looked down at her. Her breathing was ragged, shallow. A gash across her side exposed cracked ribs and oozing black-red blood. One eye, gold and slitted like a serpent, fluttered open. It locked with his. There was no plea, no fear, just defiance. No one moved. Elias stepped forward. "What are you doing?" the Trelkin snapped. "She's a patient," Elias replied simply. "That thing killed hundreds. And right now, she's not holding a weapon. She's bleeding. That's all that matters. You treat her, and you'll be labeled a traitor." Elias didn't answer. He grabbed gloves, a med kit, and a dermal sealer. The other medics backed away like he was contagious. He worked quickly, cleaning the wound, sealing arteries, stabilizing her vitals. The blood was thick and slow to clot. Her species metabolized differently, and Elias had to adapt on the fly. As he inserted a Regenero stent into her ribcage, her claws twitched. Her jaw tightened. She was awake. "You should have let me die," she hissed, voice guttural, broken. Elias didn't stop. "You're not dead. That's what counts. You hate my kind. I've lost people to your kind," Elias admitted. "But I don't leave anyone to die on my table. That's not how humans work." Sirvatha's eyes narrowed. "You're fools." "Maybe," he said, "but we're consistent fools." She coughed, and blood flecked her lips. "You think this makes you righteous? Merciful?" "No," Elias said, finishing the seal. "It just makes me human." For a moment, silence returned. The beeping of the monitor steadied. Sirvatha's breathing began to even out. Then came the whispers. Outside the tent, word spread. "The human's treating her. He's lost it. Doesn't he know who she is?" Elias ignored it all. He stayed by her side, cleaning the burns on her arms, wrapping gauze around her slashed thigh. She hissed, growled, even tried to swat him away. But he didn't flinch. Hours passed. By the time the alien sun dipped behind the hills, Sirvatha was stabilized. Still unconscious, but alive. Breathing. Elias sat down beside the cot and wiped sweat from his brow. His uniform was stained black and red with alien blood. His shoulders ached. The Trelkin returned, arms crossed. "You've made your choice, human. Hope you're ready to face the consequences." Elias looked up at him, tired but calm. "I did what no one else would. That's all I need to live with." The Trelkin sneered. "She won't thank you. Her kind doesn't believe in mercy." "I didn't do it for thanks." And that was the truth. He did it because when a body came through that door bleeding and dying, it wasn't about sides or flags. It was about saving what could still be saved. That was the line he drew, the rule he followed, even if the whole galaxy called him a fool for it. As the night deepened and the other medics avoided his corner of the tent, Elias sat beside the enemy they all feared. He didn't know then that by saving her, He'd started a chain of events that would echo from the battlefield to the thrones of empires. All he knew was that she was still alive, and he hadn't broken his code. That was enough for now. Scars beneath scales. Seer Vatha awoke with a start. She reached for a weapon that wasn't there, taloned hands clawing at the air. Her muscles seized. Pain flared through her ribs and down her side, forcing her back onto the medical cot with a frustrated snarl. The human medic was there again. Elias Ward, the one they called Flesh Stitcher, behind his back. He didn't look up, just calmly adjusted the 4 feed, checked the readouts, and jotted something on a datapad. "You," she rasped, her voice like gravel scraping steel. "Why am I still alive?" He glanced at her, unsurprised. "Because I treated you. You were dying. You should have let me." Elias didn't answer that. He handed her a small cup of water. She batted it away, and it splashed across his uniform. His expression didn't change. "I don't need your pity, human." "It's not pity," he said, grabbing a towel to wipe his chest. "It's water. You lost a lot of blood. Hydration helps." She watched him with a narrowed eye. He wasn't like the others. The other medics, aliens, mostly, refused to come near her. She heard their whispers outside the curtain. Murderer. Savage. Monster. She'd heard it all before. But Elias, he was quiet, focused, unafraid. "Why are you doing this?" she asked after a long pause. He cleaned a scanner and shrugged. "Because it's my job. No one treats enemies like this. Not in war. Not without reason. I'm a medic. That's the reason." She tilted her head. "You risk disgrace and dishonor. Your allies look at you like you're diseased. I've been called worse." "You humans," she muttered, her voice trailing into something between admiration and confusion. "You baffle me." "You'll get used to it," Elias said. There was a silence between them. Not uncomfortable, just waiting. Seer Vatha finally shifted, wincing. Her side was bandaged, the pain manageable. Her claws were restrained. Not by cuffs, but soft straps to prevent tearing at the stitches. Kindness she hadn't expected. "I saw humans once," she said slowly. "Before the war. Traitors. Weak things. Pale and small. I didn't think much of them." "We're still pale," Elias said dryly. "But small? That depends on how you measure strength." Seer Vatha barked a short, surprised laugh. It cracked into a cough. She looked at him again, longer this time. "You don't fear me." "No," he said. "Should I?" She bared her fangs. "I tore Vraken's throat out with my teeth. Ripped a mech apart with my claws." "I read your file," he replied. "I still don't see a reason not to patch you up. Even after what we did at Fort Burrell." Elias stiffened. "My sister was stationed there," he said softly. Seer Vatha blinked. "And yet you saved me." He nodded. "Why?" "She made me promise," Elias said, his voice distant. "When she joined up, she said, no matter how bad it gets, remember what makes us human. Help who you can. Don't turn into what we're fighting." Seer Vatha stared at the ceiling for a while. "I don't understand that kind of mercy." "You don't have to. You just have to live with it." Another pause. Then, quietly, "I was born on a warship. First thing I held was a blade. First word I learned was strike. They trained us to break enemies. Taught us that mercy was weakness." Elias sat on the edge of her cot. Maybe they were wrong. She looked at him. No hatred now, just tiredness. A fatigue deeper than injury. "Your people," she said, "fight like demons. Burn bright. But you care for your wounded like they're gold. Even your enemies." "We don't always get it right," Elias admitted. "But we try." Seer Vatha didn't answer. She leaned back, eyes half closing. The painkillers were kicking in again. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally, her voice slurred but steady. "The others want you gone. They fear what kindness will cost them." "I'm used to being the unpopular one," Elias said with a wry smile. She closed her eyes. "Fool. Probably. But perhaps a noble one." A strange tension settled between them. Not hostile, not friendly, but something else. Something fragile. As Seer Vatha drifted into a drugged sleep, Elias sat by her side, checking her vitals one last time. Outside the tent, the murmurs continued. The stares, the judgment, the suspicion. He ignored them all. He didn't save her to prove anything. Didn't do it for glory, medals, or forgiveness. He did it because that's what a human medic does. even when the patient is the Empire's deadliest blade. Blades and bombs. The sky above the field hospital cracked with thunder, not from weather, but from a shriek of drop pods tearing through the atmosphere. Corporal Elias Ward looked up from a wounded soldier's bandage, his instincts prickling. Seconds later, the air raid sirens howled. Enemy incursion. All personnel to defensive positions. The tent shuddered as a distant blast rattled the ground. Screams and shouting rose outside, muffled, chaotic. Elias sprinted for the medbay. He knew exactly who would still be there. Inside, Rwrd was struggling to rise from her cot. Her scales were pale with strain, but her eyes burned with something fierce. "What's happening?" she growled. "Drop pod assault," Elias said, grabbing a nearby med case and stuffing in gauze, stimulants, and field sealers. "Rogue Rwrd faction. They don't respect the ceasefire." She spat. "Fanatics." Another blast hit closer this time. The tent walls bowed in. Rwrd pulled the 4 from her arm and tore off her restraints. Blood seeped through her stitches, but she stood. "You can't fight like this," Elias said, stepping in front of her. "You'll tear every repair I made." "I don't care. I won't be butchered lying on a cot." Elias didn't argue. He handed her a combat knife from the emergency kit. It looked like a toy in her clawed hand. Outside, plasma fire lit the horizon. A pod had landed just beyond the ridge, Rwrd insurgents spilling out in jagged armor, moving fast. Elias grabbed a sidearm and a trauma satchel. Not for killing, just in case he needed to save someone else. They moved together, Rwrd limping but determined, Elias scanning their surroundings. The first body they came across was a Sarnathi soldier, wounded and pinned under debris. Elias dropped to one knee, rolling the stone away. "Cover me," he said. Rwrd raised an eyebrow. "With what? Teeth? Claws? Rage? Take your pick." She grinned, then crouched beside him, eyes scanning like a predator. Elias injected the soldier with stabilizer and tagged him for evac. Then the enemy came. 3 insurgents rounded the tent corner, weapons raised. They paused when they saw Rwrd. "Death Fong," one said in disbelief. Her response was immediate. She launched forward, claws flashing. The first insurgent's rifle went flying. The second took a backhand that cracked his helmet in half. Elias shot the third in the knee and ducked as Rwrd finished the job. Breathing hard, she turned to Elias. "You still think I should be in bed? You're doing okay?" Elias admitted. "Remind me not to argue with you again." They pressed on, dodging between tents, rescuing more wounded. Rwrd dragged a fallen comms officer to safety with one arm, slashing through an enemy with the other. Elias covered her, binding wounds mid-combat, throwing grenades when he had to. They moved like they'd done this for years. 2 warriors from opposite sides of a war, syncing without words. The moment came when they reached the central generator, where half a dozen rogue Rwrd were planning charges. "Can't let them destroy that," Elias muttered. We lose that, we lose everything. Power, shields, med support." Rwrd didn't wait. She charged in, roaring, leaping into the fray like a living battering ram. Elias followed, dodging fire, shooting when he had to. She took a blade to the shoulder, snarled, and broke the attacker's neck. Elias yanked wires from a detonator and dove aside just before it blew. When it was over, smoke filled the air. The enemy retreated, leaderless and routed. The ceasefire held, but barely. Rwrd dropped to one knee, blood seeping down her arm. Elias was beside her in seconds, binding the wound. "I told you you weren't ready," he muttered. "You were right," she rasped. He raised an eyebrow. "Did you just admit that? Do not repeat it." They both laughed, exhausted and alive. Around them, the Alliance forces slowly regrouped. Medics returned. Stretchers rolled. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning damage. But now, wherever Elias and Rwrd passed, people moved aside, not with disgust, but with awe. "She fought with us," one soldier whispered. "She saved my unit," another murmured. "She's one of them, but she bled for us." Elias caught it all. He saw the way Rwrd heard it too, though she said nothing. Later that night, Back at the medical tent, Elias stitched her shoulder in silence. "You fought like a soldier," he said. She gave a low hum. "And you fought like a warrior." He nodded. "I guess we're both fools." She looked at him then, her eyes softer. "Maybe. Or maybe we're something else." Neither said the word. But the bond was real now, earned in blood, in fire, in defiance of what their people believed. And this time, when Elias brought her water, she drank. The king's favor. The ceasefire was no longer a fragile thread. It had become an agreement, formal, stamped, and honored, surprisingly, by both sides. The rogue Zaraki faction's assault had made one thing clear: peace had enemies everywhere. But in the midst of that chaos, a strange new symbol had risen, one that neither side could explain, and both sides quietly respected. A human medic and an enemy mercenary. Elias stood in the Alliance briefing chamber, back straight, uniform freshly cleaned. His wounds from the battle were minor, but the attention he now received was not. High-ranking officers whispered his name, some with admiration, others with suspicion. He was still trying to get used to it. The doors hissed open, and the air in the room seemed tense. Seer Vatha entered, no longer in blood-stained armor. She wore a ceremonial robe of dark silken cloth, threaded with sigils of the Zaraki elite. She still limped slightly, but her presence was no less commanding. And behind her, like a shadow descending from history, came the king of Zorak himself. Towering, scaled, crowned in coiled metal and bone, King Vraxar was every inch the warrior monarch. His black eyes scanned the room with a quiet fury, resting only on Elias. The room fell to silence. "I was told," the king rumbled, "that one among you treated my daughter on the battlefield." Elias blinked, slowly turned his head towards Seer Vatha. She did not meet his gaze. His stomach dropped. "Daughter, she did not tell you?" the king asked, amused. "Seer Vatha is not merely a mercenary. She's my blood, my blade, the heir of Zorak." Elias looked at her again, this time truly seeing the dignity in her posture, the authority she held even in silence. "Guess that explains the royal attitude," he muttered under his breath. She smirked slightly. The king stepped forward, his guards tense behind him. "You could have let her die. My enemies would have rejoiced. Your comrades would have cheered. And yet you chose to heal her, protect her, fight beside her." "I did my duty," Elias said simply. The king stared at him for a long moment. "That is what makes it worthy of honor." He turned, and a pair of his attendants brought forward a sealed chest. When they opened it, the room gasped. Inside was a cube of crystallized star metal, the rarest material in this quadrant. It shimmered like a frozen supernova. "This is a gift," the king said, "for your service. Use it as currency, or forge it into a weapon, or a throne. I care not." Elias blinked. I didn't save her for a reward." "I know," the king said. "That is why you deserve one." He motioned, and the attendants stepped back. Then the king looked to Seer Vatha. "My daughter," he said, "was raised in war, built to fight, forged to survive. She has killed many, but she had not once been saved." He looked back to Elias. "Until you." Seer Vatha stepped forward now, her voice clear. "I told him to let me die, father. He refused." The king nodded. "Perhaps that refusal saved more than your life." Elias felt something shift then, not just in the room, but in history itself. This wasn't about a single act of mercy anymore. It was a new precedent, one that made allies out of enemies, one that had the power to end wars. Later, as the delegation prepared to leave, Elias found himself beside Seer Vatha in the outer corridor. "You didn't tell me," he said quietly, "that you were royalty." "You didn't ask," she replied, arms folded. "Fair point." She looked at him, serious now. "I didn't want you to treat me because I was a princess. I wanted you to treat me because I was wounded. And you did." He gave a lopsided smile. "It's sort of what I do." She leaned closer, close enough that he could feel her breath against his cheek. "The king has offered you star metal, but I offer something rarer." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" She grinned. "My favor." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. It means if you ever call for aid, anywhere, anytime, I will come." He hesitated, then held out his hand. She clasped it, not gently but firmly, warrior to warrior. It didn't speak again as she walked away, but she glanced over her shoulder just once, and her eyes held something no one had ever seen from her before. Respect. Months later, on a distant outpost, as a firefight broke out and Elias found himself pinned behind cover with wounded men all around him, he tapped a tiny device hidden in his collar. Ward is Sirvatha, calling in that favor. And across the stars, a warship changed course.